The pandemic changed everything. But can we actually be happier in this so-called new normal? That's what you're here to find out. And while we're at it, what even is happiness anymore? Is it quiet moments? Is it laughing at memes in bed while your phone slides off your face? Or maybe it's something deeper, something that got reshuffled while the world went on pause. Feeling stressed and overwhelmed? You're not alone. This video reveals the latest scientific research on happiness and offers practical tips to manage anxiety, build resilience, and find joy in this new chapter of our lives. Right now, picture yourself lying back, soft blanket around your shoulders, your phone screen dimmed just enough. Outside, traffic fades into a hush. Your breath slows. And you're starting to notice something you probably haven't really asked yourself in a while: am I okay? Or more precisely, can I be happy again? You probably won't know this. Happiness isn't just a personality trait or a choice. It's a system, layered across your nervous system, your immune cells, your gut, your memories. During the pandemic, that system got an uninvited update. You adapted, beautifully, awkwardly, like most people. And now you're here. Still standing. Maybe wobbly, but still here. Before you settle in, feel free to like the video if it brought you a little peace, and if you'd like to join us again, we'd love to have you back. Subscribe when you're ready. No pressure, just rest. Share something if you feel like it. Let's slowly drift into tonight's quiet moments together. You didn't choose a happiness reset. It happened to you while you were just trying to keep going. And now, like most people, you might be wondering why your emotional range feels off. Maybe you used to laugh louder, cry easier, dream bigger. And now? You might feel numb at times. Or oddly calm, in a slightly suspicious way. That's no accident. Your brain, under long-term stress, did what it had to do: it rewired. In technical terms, this is known as neuroplasticity. And it's both a blessing and a puzzle. Because now that the emergency has passed, your brain might still be stuck in crisis architecture. Mainstream research backs this up. One major study by the University of North Carolina found that during the height of the pandemic, there was a significant drop in people's ability to experience positive affect. In simple terms, people weren't just sad, they stopped registering good stuff. Like eating your favorite dessert and barely tasting it. Your brain dimmed the lights to conserve power. And now, you need to gently flip them back on. And here's something interesting. Neuroscientists believe that during extreme events like pandemics, the amygdala, your brain's fear center, goes into overdrive, while the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and future planning, slows down. In other words, you're wired for short-term survival, not long-term joy. So how do you find happiness when your brain still thinks it's in a bunker? You start small. You start curious. You acknowledge that happiness today doesn't look like it did in 2019, and it probably shouldn't. Because now you've seen what can break, and maybe, what can hold. But a long-standing controversy surrounds the nature of happiness itself. Philosophers have argued for centuries: is happiness a fleeting state, or a sustained way of being? Hedonists like Epicurus believed it was all about pleasure. Stoics, meanwhile, insisted it was about inner stability, regardless of external chaos. And in your post-pandemic world, you might find yourself toggling between both models, trying to balance delight with durability. Here's a quirky little fact: in the 17th century, happiness was considered a matter of luck. The root of the word happiness is actually hap, which means chance or fortune. That means, originally, to be happy was to be lucky. No wonder it still feels so slippery. Now, your modern brain likes things to make sense. It wants clean lines, clear answers. But emotions rarely offer that. Especially now. So you learn to sit with ambiguity. You start noticing when you feel light, even just a flicker. That moment when a bird lands ridiculously close to you. Or when your coffee hits the right temperature. That's the beginning. You don't wait for huge joy. You start with what shows up. Another study, This one from Yale looked at emotional flexibility after trauma. People who allowed themselves to feel a wide range of emotions, including negative ones, were more likely to report happiness over time. That's right. Not toxic positivity. Just honest range. So if you felt weirdly grateful and exhausted at the same time lately, congratulations. You're emotionally multilingual. You might find this surprising. Some cultures don't even have a direct word for happiness. In certain indigenous languages, well-being is expressed relationally, through connections with land, family, and spirits. That means your Western idea of happiness, as a solo mood to chase, might be too narrow. And in this new world, broadening that definition might be the most important first step. Your post-pandemic happiness might be quieter, slower, less photogenic. You may no longer crave loud vacations or perfect brunches. You might find peace in folding your laundry while a podcast hums in the background. That's not regression. That's evolution. You've recalibrated. And yet, there remains considerable disagreement about whether people bounce back to their baseline happiness after crises or if they actually grow. This is the core of what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill versus post-traumatic growth debate. Are you just returning to where you were, or rising above it, changed forever? Either way, what matters is that you're aware of the shift. Because awareness is the lever. Once you know your system changed, you can begin to nudge it in the direction you choose. Not with giant leaps, but with tiny, sleepy steps. As your mind drifts deeper, another layer opens, the role of stress, not as a one-time spike, but as a quiet companion you've maybe gotten a little too used to. Let's turn toward that next. Stress used to be a moment, a traffic jam, a tough email, an awkward conversation. But lately, for you and for so many others, it's become a lifestyle. A background hum. Like the refrigerator in your apartment, always on, slightly buzzing, easy to ignore until it breaks you down. You might not even realize how deeply stress has woven itself into your day. You check your phone and feel a jolt before even unlocking the screen. You wake up already behind. You scroll endlessly but absorb nothing. That's not just mental fatigue, it's your nervous system tapping out. Here's the thing, during the pandemic, your body adapted to chronic stress by turning your sympathetic nervous system into the default setting. Fight, flight, or freeze. And it didn't just stop when the world reopened. Your body doesn't read headlines. It reads signals. Noise. Pace. Demands. And for many, those haven't really calmed down, they've just gotten sneakier. Research from Stanford University during the early COVID years found that people's cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone, remained high long after the initial lockdowns ended. The body learned to stay ready. That hyper-readiness, while once useful, now keeps stealing your calm, and with it, your happiness. But you probably already knew that stress affects your mood. What you might not realize is how it messes with your ability to feel joy at all. Chronic stress hijacks your dopamine system, the same reward circuit that makes good things feel, well, good. Too much stress for too long, and even pleasant moments land flat. Like watching your favorite show and zoning out halfway through. You weren't bored. You were flooded. Here's something interesting. There's a phenomenon called allostatic load. It's basically the wear and tear your body takes from being in a constant state of adjustment. Think of it as emotional jet lag. You're always catching up to some new stressor, never really landing. That load builds silently. It can affect everything from your immune system to your memory to, yes, your emotional tone. And the irony? You're not even doing anything wrong. You adapted the best way you could. The real issue is that stress became so constant, you stopped noticing it. Like being under a weighted blanket that stopped feeling heavy. But your body still feels it. That tension in your shoulders? That shallow breathing? That interrupted sleep? Stress signatures, all of them. Philosophers have long debated the nature of suffering. Is it an inescapable part of the human condition, or something to be minimized at all costs? Some, like Schopenhauer, saw life itself as suffering with brief breaks of relief. Others, like the Stoics, saw suffering as a teacher, something to lean into, not away from. And you? You're probably somewhere in the middle, just trying to make it through your week with a little less tightness in your chest. But here's a hopeful twist: your brain is remarkably capable of rewiring away from stress. Neuroplasticity doesn't care about the source, it just follows patterns. That means you can repattern it. Not with dramatic changes, but through subtle, daily resets. One approach backed by science: pattern interruption. That's when you break a stress cycle by doing something, anything, unexpected. Like standing up and walking backwards for a few steps. Yes, really. Your brain resets its attention. The frontal lobe lights up. Stress gets momentarily paused. It doesn't solve your problems, but it reminds your nervous system that you're not trapped. Another proven technique? Box breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. That's it. Navy SEALs use it. So do yoga instructors. But more importantly, so can you. It takes under a minute and recalibrates your vagus nerve, the long highway of calm running from your brain to your belly. Think of it as the rest and digest switch. And it still works, even if you haven't felt relaxed in years. An odd but true fact: rats in labs exposed to chronic stress actually forget how to experience pleasure. They ignore sugar water. Just stop caring. When researchers reverse the stress, the rats rediscover joy. So yeah, if a rat can bounce back from burnout, maybe you can too. Still, there remains considerable disagreement about how much stress is good for you. Some psychologists argue that moderate, controlled stress builds resilience, especially when followed by recovery. Others warn that even low-level, unrelenting stress causes long-term psychological damage. The key, as always, is balance. But who gets to define what's moderate in a world like this? So you start noticing the micro-stresses, the alerts on your phone, the blinking red dot, the unread email badge. All those tiny threats. None of them life-ending, but together, they keep your nervous system in a low-grade panic. You're basically trying to be happy while a silent alarm keeps going off in your brain. But there's a way through. You can gently disarm that alarm system by reintroducing patterns of safety. One way is through predictability. Give yourself the same tea at the same time every day. Let your brain relax into something expected. Another way? Deliberate slowness. Stir your coffee 3 extra times. Linger in the shower. Pet your dog without looking at your phone. These micropauses are not indulgent. They're medicine. And here's something lighthearted to remember. In Japan, there's a word, karoshi, that literally means death from overwork. Grim, yes. But the very existence of the term is a cultural reminder that unchecked stress has consequences. You, however, don't have to get that far. You just have to notice what your system is carrying. You don't owe the world your constant readiness. You don't have to live like an emergency is just around the corner. The truth is, your body wants to be calm. It wants to heal. But you have to give it a reason to believe it's safe. That shift in energy leads us into something else, something that crept up quietly while you were busy staying 6 feet apart: loneliness. Not just social distance, but emotional distance. And it may be shaping your happiness more than you realize. You can be surrounded by people, family, coworkers, even a crowded train, and still feel lonely. That's the strange thing about loneliness. It's not about how many people are near you. It's about whether you feel seen, connected, safe. And during the pandemic, something cracked open. That deeper, quieter need for belonging became harder to fill. You remember those months. The video calls, the distance greetings, the way eye contact turned to pixels. Human warmth got translated into emojis. And while everyone did their best, something about that distance didn't just affect your calendar, it shifted your chemistry. Mainstream studies during the pandemic period, like the one published by the American Psychological Association, found a sharp increase in self-reported loneliness. That was expected. But what was more surprising was how many people continued to feel lonely long after restrictions were lifted. Your brain got used to holding back. Socialization became risky, then optional, then exhausting. It turns out, loneliness activates the same regions of the brain that process physical pain. That means when you felt isolated, your body read it like a wound. No wonder you felt tired, numb, maybe even a little invisible. But here's something interesting. Your brain has a default mode network, a system that lights up when you're alone, daydreaming, or thinking about yourself and others. When you're disconnected for too long, this network starts to misfire. It gets harder to empathize, harder to read emotional cues. Your social muscles atrophy. So if you've been feeling awkward in social situations lately, that's not personality, it's neurobiology. Philosophers still argue whether solitude is a path to enlightenment or a condition of suffering. Thoreau glorified aloneness. Sartre famously declared that hell is other people. You might feel stuck in between, craving connection but feeling oddly safer alone. That tension is real, and it's common. An odd but true fact, during the 18th century, being alone too much was considered a medical condition called melancholia. Doctors literally prescribed social interaction as a cure. Today, we just tell people to get out more, as if it's that easy. And here's the deeper truth. You don't just need people around you. You need safe people. People who feel like soft places to land. The pandemic made you reassess who those people are. For some, it brought them closer. For others, it pulled a curtain back. Friendships dissolved. Family ties strained. You learned who called just to check in, and who only showed up when they needed something. There remains considerable disagreement about how much loneliness is too much. Is it always harmful? Or can periods of solitude offer healing? Some researchers argue that temporary solitude is crucial for creativity and self-reflection. Others insist that chronic loneliness is as damaging as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Yes, 15. That's how deeply it hits your health. But loneliness doesn't just live in your head. It changes your immune system. UCLA researchers found that lonely people show higher levels of inflammation, making them more vulnerable to illness. It also impairs sleep. You might fall asleep easily, but your body stays alert. Alone equals unsafe, as far as your biology is concerned. So what do you do when your need for connection feels dulled or even frightening? You ease back in. One gentle conversation. One shared laugh. One walk with someone who doesn't drain you. You practice presence again, slowly. No pressure to network or get out there. Just a quiet return to being with. Here's a tip rooted in research. Shared vulnerability builds connection faster than small talk. Instead of weather and traffic, talk about something you've been thinking about lately. Ask how someone's really doing. These moments create social microbonds that boost oxytocin, your brain's trust hormone. During lockdown, some people reported forming deeper connections with fewer people. Quality over quantity. One good friend over dozens of acquaintances. That's not social failure, that's emotional evolution. The pandemic turned your social map upside down. You may have realized that you were clinging to connections that didn't feed you. And that's okay. Now, in this new space, you get to rebuild with intention. And if socializing still feels hard, there's no shame in starting small. Smile at the barista. Text one person today. Comment on a post that made you laugh. These aren't empty gestures, they're threads. Weave enough, and you get a net. One that catches you when the loneliness creeps in again. Also, let's not forget the role of self-compassion. One study from Kristen Neff's lab showed that people who spoke to themselves kindly during periods of isolation were better able to cope emotionally. So if you're still beating yourself up for feeling distant or slow to reconnect, don't. You were adapting. You still are. And just a quirky detail, Dolphins, yes, dolphins, have been observed to form lifelong friendships and display signs of grief when separated. Loneliness, it turns out, isn't just human. It's mammalian. That ache to be known? It lives deep in biology. Your happiness is relational. It doesn't grow in a vacuum. You need mirroring, laughter, eye contact, sometimes even a shared silence. And the good news is, you haven't lost the ability to connect. It's just a little rusty. As your mind softens into this, let it guide you toward the next piece of the puzzle, how your digital life stepped in as a substitute, and what that did to your happiness, for better or worse. Remember when your phone used to be a break from the world? A fun distraction, a digital playground. Then the pandemic hit, and it became your lifeline, your office, your therapist, your window to the world, and your personal anxiety machine. You scrolled for connection. You zoomed for work. You binged everything from news updates to banana bread recipes. And slowly, without even noticing, your brain began associating screens with survival. The dopamine hits were real, but so was the crash. That's the paradox. Your digital life helped you cope, yet it quietly rewired your happiness systems in ways you might still be unpacking. And if you've noticed that nothing quite hits the way it used to, there's a reason for that. Let's start with your dopamine system. Dopamine, the motivation molecule, gets released when you anticipate something rewarding. Not when it happens, when you think it might happen. That's why scrolling feels addictive. It's not about what you're seeing. It's about what might come next. Mainstream research from MIT found that digital media, especially social media, creates a near-constant stimulation loop that keeps dopamine slightly elevated, but never satisfied. So you keep scrolling. Your brain keeps chasing. And happiness? It takes a back seat to novelty. You might find this surprising. Apps like Instagram and TikTok use variable reward schedules, the same principle that makes slot machines so addictive. You don't know what's coming next, so your brain keeps hoping. And hoping. And hoping. Over time, this rewires your brain's reward baseline. Simple pleasures, a walk, a book, a slow dinner, start to feel boring. Your mind craves the rush, even as your body grows tired. That's the digital dopamine trap. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that reducing social media use to just 30 minutes a day resulted in significant improvements in well-being over a 3-week period. Not quitting entirely. Just pulling back a bit. Enough to let your brain remember how to rest. Philosophers continue to debate whether technology is enhancing or eroding the human experience. Thinkers like Marshall McLuhan believe the medium shapes us more than the message. Others, like Heidegger, warned that technology risks turning humans into tools themselves, mechanized, disengaged from real being. You're living inside the tension. You love your memes and podcasts and playlists. But you also sense that your happiness might be scattered across too many tabs. And the pandemic made that worse. When physical interaction became risky, you reached for the screen. For comfort. For community. And in many cases, it helped. Online communities flourished. People sent voice notes instead of texts. Virtual movie nights became a thing. But somewhere along the way, your screen time stopped being intentional. It just was. An odd but true fact. Humans blink significantly less when staring at screens, sometimes reducing blinks by over 60%. That doesn't just dry out your eyes. It affects brain oxygenation, contributing to fatigue, irritability, and that spaced-out feeling you get after a 4-hour YouTube spiral. So what do you do when your digital habits are draining your joy, but they also feel non-negotiable? You start with awareness. Not judgment. Just noticing. Track your screen time for a day. Notice which apps leave you anxious and which ones actually lift you up. Hint, it's rarely the ones with endless scrolls and comment wars. Then, introduce one analog moment per day. Not a digital detox. Just a pause. A moment when your eyes aren't backlit and your brain isn't waiting for a notification. Try handwriting a note. Lighting a candle and doing nothing. Watching shadows move on your ceiling. Your brain will protest, at first. But give it time. You're retraining your reward circuits. Another technique? Intentional friction. Make it slightly harder to open apps that drain you. Move them to a folder. Add a password. Change your home screen to grayscale. These small annoyances slow the dopamine loop, giving your prefrontal cortex, aka your judgment center, a chance to step in. There remains considerable disagreement about how much screen time is truly harmful. Some psychologists argue it's about content, not duration. Others insist that time matters, especially for mood regulation and sleep cycles. But almost everyone agrees, the more mindless your digital consumption, the lower your reported happiness. And here's something gentle to remember: your need for screens came from a place of care. You were trying to stay connected, informed, entertained, safe. That matters. But now, you can begin to separate survival patterns from true nourishment. You might find this surprising: people who take photos of events report less emotional presence than those who don't. Your phone, for all its memory capturing abilities, can sometimes remove you from the very moment you're trying to save. And if you're feeling guilty about your screen habits, please don't. Guilt adds shame, and shame shuts down curiosity. You're not broken. You're adapting. And now, you're choosing to adapt again. Rebuilding digital boundaries doesn't mean throwing your phone in a lake, tempting, yes. It means using it with clarity. Ask yourself, is this feeding me, numbing me, or draining me? That one question can reshape your habits over time. And don't forget, joy lives online too. The video that made you cry, laugh at 1 a.m. The stranger's comment that made you feel seen. The Zoom call where everyone just exhaled. There's beauty there. It's just about balance. That balance brings us to something beautifully counterintuitive, an old-school practice that modern science now fully supports: gratitude. Not just as a buzzword, but as a rewiring tool. Get ready, because it's more powerful than you probably think. Gratitude. You've heard it before, maybe too much. Keep a gratitude journal. Be thankful. Look on the bright side. It's become a little cliché, hasn't it? But what if there's real science behind it? Not fluffy, motivational poster stuff, but actual, observable brain shifts that happen when you practice it. Here's what might surprise you: gratitude doesn't just make you feel better. It changes your brain. It strengthens the pathways associated with emotion regulation, social bonding, and even physical health. And after years of living in survival mode, that shift can mean everything. Picture this: you're lying in bed at the end of a long, draining day. Your phone's screen still glowing from one last scroll. You feel heavy, maybe a little disconnected. And then, almost mechanically, you list 3 things you're grateful for. Nothing major. Just a good coffee, a warm breeze, a kind text. It feels small. But inside your brain, something lights up. Mainstream research from UC Davis has shown that people who wrote down 5 things they were grateful for once a week reported significantly greater happiness levels than those who didn't. Their sleep improved. Their physical health improved. Even their optimism about the future increased. And all they did was notice the good. The science behind it lies in your brain's reward and emotional circuits. Gratitude activates the medial prefrontal cortex, a region associated with decision-making and emotional regulation. In short, gratitude helps you feel more balanced, less reactive, more content. You might find this surprising: the effects of gratitude aren't just mental. They can be measured in your heartbeat, your breathing, your immune markers. One study even found that grateful people have stronger heart health, lower blood pressure, better variability, and reduced inflammation. But philosophers have long debated whether gratitude should be cultivated or arise naturally. Is it still meaningful if you have to force it? Or does the act of searching for it, especially when it's hard, make it more real? Some argue that forced gratitude is performative. Others say it's like exercise, awkward at first, but eventually natural. The word gratitude shares roots with grace, a sense of unearned gift. That means gratitude isn't about keeping score or pretending things are better than they are. It's about softening, recognizing, letting moments count. Still, in a post-pandemic world, gratitude might feel complicated. You may have lost things, people, opportunities, time. You may feel a quiet resistance to the whole idea. Why should I be grateful when so much went wrong? That's valid. And here's the trick: gratitude doesn't cancel pain. It coexists with it. In fact, one of the most powerful forms of gratitude is called tragic optimism, the ability to feel thankful even in the face of difficulty. Not because you're in denial, but because you've trained yourself to see what remains. Here's a quirky detail. In Bhutan, a country often ranked among the happiest in the world, people are encouraged to think about death 5 times a day. Not to be morbid, but to keep perspective. When you acknowledge impermanence, you start appreciating the small stuff. Your morning coffee becomes sacred. Your cat's weird sneeze becomes hilarious. Your body, aching, but still yours, becomes enough. And don't worry, gratitude doesn't have to mean journaling with a fancy pen by candlelight, unless you love that. It can be messy, scribbled on a napkin, mumbled under your breath in traffic, texted to a friend out of nowhere, "Hey, I'm really glad you're around." There remains considerable disagreement about whether gratitude should be inward, focused on what you have, or outward, focused on who has given to you. Some psychologists say personal gratitude boosts mood, while others insist that relational gratitude, thanking others, strengthens social bonds and happiness simultaneously. The truth? Probably both. And if the word gratitude feels too stiff, reframe it. Try noticing. Try appreciation. Try that moment that made me smile for no reason. You don't have to spiritualize it. You just have to mean it. To really feel it, slow down. Let the moment land. That first sip of water when you're thirsty. That sudden breeze on your face. That text that came at just the right time. Pause. Label it. Absorb it. Here's a tip: gratitude works better when it's specific. Don't just say, "I'm grateful for my family." Say, "I'm grateful my sister called me just to ask how I was doing." The brain remembers details. That's how emotional memory sticks. And when you practice this regularly, you start to notice a shift. Not just in how you feel, but in what you see. Your brain begins scanning for things to appreciate instead of things to fear. That's not denial. That's neuroplasticity in action. You might find this surprising. Monks who practice loving-kindness meditation, which includes gratitude components, show increased activity in the left prefrontal cortex, associated with positive emotions. But here's the kicker: similar activity was seen in regular people after just 2 weeks of practice. You don't need a cave in Tibet. You just need 5 minutes of intention. And no, this isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about creating balance. After years of hypervigilance, gratitude gives your nervous system a moment to rest. A moment to say, maybe this, right now, is enough. That quiet satisfaction leads us somewhere softer, into the overlooked art of tiny joys. Because sometimes, the big life changes don't come from massive revelations. They come from moments so small, you almost miss them. You know those tiny moments that pass so quickly you barely register them? Like when sunlight hits your wall just right. Or when someone holds the door a half-second longer than expected. Those are micro-joys. Fleeting. Delicate. And strangely powerful. After everything you've been through, your brain doesn't always register joy the same way anymore. Big emotions take energy. And let's face it, you've probably been conserving yours for the past few years. That's why micro-joys matter. They don't ask for much. They slip in under the radar, often when you least expect them. Here's the science behind it. Your brain has something called the salience network, which decides what's worth paying attention to. In stressful times, it prioritizes threats. That's why you notice the bad news first, the spilled coffee, the traffic. But when you deliberately train your attention to catch beauty, even tiny beauty, you start shifting that network. One study published in Psychological Science found that people who recorded small moments of awe, things like the curve of a cloud, or a stranger's kindness, reported increased well-being over time. Not grand experiences. Not vacations. Just little sparks. And here's something interesting. Awe, even in small doses, reduces your sense of self-focus. It makes your problems feel smaller, your perspective wider. That's why microjoys are more than just nice. They're recalibrating. They open a window in a stuffy emotional room. Philosophers have long debated the role of awe in the human experience. Kant saw it as a confrontation with the sublime, something beyond understanding. Others, like Burke, described it as fear mingled with pleasure. But modern psychology suggests awe is a kind of reboot, a reminder that you're part of something larger, even if that something is just a perfectly timed breeze. And here's a quirky fact: people walking through a city park and deliberately looking for small wonders, like oddly shaped leaves or sidewalk chalk, reported higher mood levels than those just going for exercise. Your joy is hiding everywhere. You just have to look down. Or up. Or sideways. But let's be honest. Sometimes you don't want to look for joy. You're tired. You're flat. You're scrolling and eating dry cereal straight from the box. That's okay. The trick isn't forcing joy. It's making space for it. Try this: pick one ordinary part of your day and turn it into a joy ritual. Maybe it's how you make your coffee. Maybe it's the way you wrap yourself in a blanket. Maybe it's the sound your cat makes when it flops dramatically onto the couch. Let that moment matter. Let it count. You might find this surprising. In Japanese culture, there's a concept called wabi-sabi, which celebrates the beauty of imperfection and impermanence. A chipped bowl. A faded photo. A crooked smile. You don't need perfect moments to feel real joy. In fact, the imperfect ones are often the sweetest. And here's another little tool: delight tracking. This comes from poet Ross Gay, who wrote a book about finding one delight every day for a year. Not deep, life-changing events. Just things like watching a kid pretend to be a robot or realizing your shirt smells like sunshine. It's deceptively powerful. There remains considerable disagreement about whether joy is a skill you can cultivate or a response that just happens to you. Some argue that seeking joy makes it artificial. Others say that joy, like a muscle, strengthens with practice. What's clear is that your brain responds to intention. If you invite joy, it tends to show up. But the hard part? Slowing down enough to notice it. In a post-pandemic world, where everything wants your attention, notifications, updates, noise, slowness becomes a radical act. Try sipping instead of chugging. Listening instead of replying. Observing instead of documenting. And if you're still struggling to feel much of anything, remember, numbness isn't failure. It's often a sign of emotional overload. Your system shut down the volume so it wouldn't short-circuit. But even in numbness, joy can get in, through texture, scent, warmth, rhythm. That's why sensory experiences matter so much. Here's something simple: run your fingers over something soft. Take your socks off and feel the floor. Chew something slowly, even if it's just a piece of gum. These are grounding techniques, yes, but they're also gateways to joy. Because joy isn't always an emotion. Sometimes it's a sensation. Another study, this one from UC Berkeley, found that people who spent time noticing and describing small sensory pleasures, like the feel of warm water or the color of autumn leaves, experienced more sustained happiness than those focusing on abstract goals. Joy is in the now, not the someday. And just a quirky observation: pigeons. Yes, pigeons. In some cities, researchers found that watching birds in motion, even common ones, helped people feel more calm and connected to nature. Joy doesn't always wear fancy feathers. So here's your challenge, not another task, just a gentle invitation. Find one thing today that makes you smile unexpectedly. Not a forced smile. Just a little lift. A flicker. A wrinkle of gladness. That's your micro-joy. Let it land. As your awareness softens into that space, another truth becomes clear. Joy doesn't stand alone. It anchors itself to rhythm, to the predictable, to the quiet rituals that make life feel like yours. And those rituals? They're more powerful than you remember. Rituals. Routines. Repetition. They sound boring, don't they? Like the stuff you do when there's nothing exciting happening. But here's what you probably didn't realize. Rituals are tiny lighthouses in your day. When everything feels uncertain, they remind your nervous system that some things are still solid. Still safe. Still yours. During the pandemic, your routines were dismantled piece by piece. Wake up, commute, meet friends, move through space, all replaced by blur. The boundaries between work and home vanished. Time warped. Days melted into each other. And without those familiar cues, your sense of emotional stability drifted. That's because routine doesn't just structure your day, it regulates your brain. Your circadian rhythms, hormone cycles, emotional tone, they all anchor to repetition. Your body loves predictability. Not because it's dull, but because it gives your brain room to rest. To stop racing. To just be. Mainstream research from the University of London found that people who maintained consistent wake-up and sleep times during lockdown reported significantly lower anxiety and greater emotional resilience. Not because their lives were easier, but because rhythm gave their minds a framework to cope. Even simple routines like making your bed, prepping coffee, or putting on outside clothes while working from home were shown to improve motivation and reduce depressive symptoms. It's not the task, it's the signal it sends. I'm still here. I'm still in motion. And here's something interesting, rituals don't even have to be productive. In fact, some of the most powerful ones are pure comfort. Lighting the same candle. Playing the same music while you cook. Saying the same phrase before bed, even if it's just, "we made it." That repetition tells your nervous system, we're safe enough to settle. Philosophers debated the role of habit in happiness. Aristotle believed that virtue, and thus happiness, comes from repeated actions. Nietzsche, meanwhile, worried that routines could become cages, stripping life of spontaneity. And here you are, walking the line, craving routine, but fearing monotony. But maybe the goal isn't strict schedules or productivity hacks. Maybe it's about tiny rituals that help you feel more like yourself. That cup of tea you make the same way every morning? That's identity in action. That's you, choosing stability over chaos, even for 90 seconds. An odd but true fact, in ancient Rome, people began each day by saluting their household gods, tiny figurines called lares. It wasn't religious for everyone. It was grounding. A simple way to say, the day starts here. I begin now. That's what a ritual does. It marks your moment. You might not have statues in your kitchen, or maybe you do, no judgment, but you do have the power to create openings and closings in your day. A walk that separates work from rest. A playlist that starts dinner time. Even brushing your teeth with intention. It all adds up. There remains considerable disagreement about whether routine creates happiness or just keeps us from falling apart. Some psychologists argue that too much routine dulls creativity and passion. Others claim that without routine, we burn out trying to make too many decisions. The answer probably lives in the middle, flexible structure. And if you're rebuilding your routine from scratch, go slow. One anchor at a time. Don't aim for perfect mornings or flawless productivity. Just start with one thing you can do at the same time every day. Watering your plant. Stretching. Saying good morning to yourself in the mirror. Your brain loves this stuff. It releases dopamine in anticipation of a known pattern. That's why rituals don't just feel good, they change your chemical makeup. You literally become more emotionally stable just by giving your day some rhythm. Here's a tip: name your rituals. Call your evening wind down, the shutdown ceremony. Name your tea break, the great steeping. Give them flair. You'll start to look forward to them, not as chores, but as acts of self-loyalty. A daily, I've got you, from you. And don't underestimate sensory cues. Smell, sound, touch, they're the backbone of ritual. Light a particular incense when you read. Use the same blanket for afternoon naps. Over time, your brain associates these cues with rest, focus, or pleasure. It's like training a puppy, except the puppy is your nervous system. You might find this surprising: Olympic athletes often have quirky personal rituals before competition, not because they're superstitious, but because those rituals reduce anxiety and boost focus. If Serena Williams can bounce her tennis ball 5 times before serving, you can definitely play the same lofi track before writing emails. And if your routine fell apart lately, join the club. But now you get to rebuild it with intention. You get to ask, what do I want to come back to every day? Not out of duty, but out of comfort. Think of your daily rhythm like a song. It doesn't have to be complex. Just consistent enough to hum. And when life gets too loud, that rhythm becomes a kind of emotional white noise, a place to rest inside yourself. Which brings us to something deeper. Beyond mood and movement, beyond even rituals, there's meaning. Because joy, as lovely as it is, can be fleeting. But meaning? That's what makes happiness last. There's a quiet difference between feeling good and feeling fulfilled. You might laugh at a video, savor a slice of cake, or relax in a warm bath. That's happiness, yes, but it's the kind that flickers. Meaning, though? That's the slow-burning kind. The kind that carries you through the weird days, the hard weeks, the years that feel blurry. After the pandemic, a lot of your sources of meaning might have shifted, or even disappeared. Maybe your job lost its purpose. Maybe your routines unraveled. Maybe you had big questions like, what am I even doing? And found silence. That's not a failure. That's the beginning of something honest. Here's the thing: happiness without meaning is like candy without nutrients. It tastes good, but it doesn't fill you. And post-crisis, most people crave something with weight. Something that says, this matters. I matter. This isn't just passing time. Mainstream psychology distinguishes between hedonic well-being, pleasure and comfort, and eudaimonic well-being, meaning and self-realization. Researchers like Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, argue that lasting happiness depends more on the latter. You need a sense of purpose, not just comfort. Studies have shown that people who score high in life meaning report lower rates of depression, even if their day-to-day life isn't happy, in a traditional sense. That means meaning acts like emotional armor. It doesn't make life easier. It just makes it feel more worth it. Philosophers have asked where meaning comes from. Is it assigned by the universe, or do you create it yourself? Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, believed that humans can endure nearly anything if they find meaning in it. Nietzsche echoed this with his famous line, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And you? You don't need to know your grand purpose tonight. But you can start with something smaller. Something humble. What gives you a little direction? Who or what do you want to show up for? You might find this surprising. Japanese culture has a concept called ikigai, which roughly translates to reason for being. It sits at the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. But even if you're not sure of all four, leaning into just one can bring surprising peace. Some people find meaning in extremely niche things. Like collecting spoons. Tending to bonsai trees. Cataloging birdsongs. It's not about scale, it's about depth. Meaning doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to fit you. So how do you start finding it, especially when everything feels foggy? First, try asking better questions. Instead of, what should I do with my life, ask, what gives me energy, or, when do I feel most connected? Notice the answers that land not in your head, but in your body. That spark. That little hum. That's your compass. There remains considerable disagreement about whether meaning is best found through service to others or through personal growth. Some traditions say you find purpose in giving. Others say you must first understand yourself. The likely answer? You need both. You find meaning in yourself, for others. And if you're thinking, but I'm not saving the world, stop right there. Meaning doesn't have to be dramatic. It can live in showing up for your kids. Taking care of your plants. Writing stories no one's read, yet. The key is intention. You do it because it matters to you, not because it impresses anyone else. Here's a tip: meaning often hides behind resistance. That thing you're avoiding? That conversation, that creative project, that lingering idea, that might be the very doorway. Because meaning isn't always fun. Sometimes it asks for effort. But the effort makes you feel alive. Hospice nurses report that the biggest regrets of the dying aren't about what people did, but what they didn't do. The words unsaid. The art unattempted. The risks not taken. Meaning often lives in action, not just reflection. And yet, it's okay if your meaning isn't crystal clear. Especially now. Post-pandemic life is messy, layered, and constantly shifting. So don't wait for the perfect purpose. Just start noticing what feels aligned. What makes you feel right in your own skin. Sometimes, your why is simply to witness beauty. To hold space. To be a gentle presence in a harsh world. That's not small. That's sacred. Here's another frame: think of your life as a story. Not every chapter has fireworks. Some chapters are quiet rebuilding scenes. But every story needs those. They set up the breakthroughs. They deepen the character, you. And knowing you're in a story gives things context. That hard thing you're going through? Maybe it's not the end. Maybe it's just the middle. As you sit with that idea, let your body relax into the truth that your life still holds meaning, even if you can't articulate it yet. Even if you've been drifting. Even if you're still figuring it out. And just like that, we arrive at something your body's been craving just as much as your heart: deep, healing rest. Because your emotions don't just live in your mind. They rest in your cells, your rhythms, your sleep. And that's where we're heading next. Sleep. That mysterious, maddening, magical process you can't live without, yet so often fight against. It's where your body repairs, your brain consolidates, and, believe it or not, your happiness gets restored. The problem? The pandemic didn't just mess with your schedule. It rewrote your sleep blueprint. You probably noticed it: late nights, restless tossing, vivid dreams, 3 a.m. mind loops. Maybe even full-on sleep revenge, staying up way too late just to feel like you had some control over your day. Yep. There's a term for that: revenge bedtime procrastination. Here's the twist: sleep isn't just rest. It's emotional reset. During deep sleep, your brain clears out stress chemicals, regulates mood hormones like serotonin and dopamine, and lets your limbic system, the seat of emotion, cool down. Without enough sleep, you're not just tired. You're emotionally disoriented. Mainstream research from Harvard Medical School shows that poor sleep dramatically increases negative mood reactivity. Translation: a bad night makes small problems feel bigger. You stub your toe and it suddenly feels like the universe hates you. That's not drama, it's neuroscience. And here's something interesting: REM sleep, the stage when you dream, helps you process emotions, especially fear and grief. After traumatic experiences, your brain wants more REM to metabolize it all. No wonder pandemic-era dreams got so wild. Your subconscious was hard at work. For centuries, philosophers have questioned the purpose of sleep and the meaning behind dreams. Freud believed dreams revealed hidden, repressed desires, while Jung viewed them as messages from a shared collective unconscious. Today's scientific perspective is more grounded, though just as intrigued, suggesting that sleep could be the brain's most effective form of therapy. An odd but true fact: dolphins sleep with half their brain at a time, literally keeping one eye open. Humans can't do that, but in times of stress, your sleep acts like it. You stay in lighter stages, hyper-aware. It's your biology trying to protect you. But long-term, that protection becomes a problem. Because here's the catch: happiness can't flourish in a fatigued brain. A tired brain is more reactive, more anxious, and less resilient. That means joy, even when it's right in front of you, feels harder to hold. You might find this surprising. Studies show that just one night of poor sleep reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates emotion and logic. That's why everything feels off after a bad night. You're not imagining it. You're just underpowered. There remains considerable disagreement about how much sleep adults actually need. Some say 7 hours is enough. Others insist 8 to 9 is ideal, especially during emotional recovery. But most agree that quality matters as much as quantity. Deep, uninterrupted sleep restores you better than a longer stretch of light, broken sleep. So what can you do if your sleep has been iffy? First, forget perfection. Aim for consistency. Go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time, even on weekends. Your brain loves rhythm. It learns when to release melatonin, when to wind down, when to let go. Second, reclaim your sleep space. No phones in bed. No doom scrolling. No watching apocalyptic documentaries under your duvet. Make your room feel like a sleep cave, cool, quiet, dark. Your body needs cues to switch gears. Third, pre-sleep rituals. Not because they're cute, but because they signal safety. Think low lighting. Warm tea. Gentle music. A book that doesn't stress you out. Stretch your toes. Hum a little. Remind your nervous system that the day is done. And yes, if your brain insists on thinking at bedtime, give it a container. Try a worry notebook. Write your thoughts down before bed so they stop spinning around in your head. Offload them, like taking out emotional trash. Your dreams will thank you. People who engage in short gratitude or mindfulness practices before sleep fall asleep faster and report better rest. Even a 2-minute reflection, what felt peaceful today, can shift your brain into rest mode. Still, sleep doesn't always cooperate. If you wake up at 3 a.m., don't panic. Get up. Stretch. Read a few pages of something boring. Let your body remember how to be sleepy. Forcing it only makes things worse. And here's the real secret: don't make sleep another thing to achieve. Your body wants to rest. It's not trying to fight you. It's just been through a lot. And sometimes, it needs retraining, gently, patiently. There's also the link between sleep and happiness hormones. During deep sleep, your body restores serotonin, the neurotransmitter tied to mood balance and contentment. Miss out on sleep, and your serotonin levels drop. You feel more irritable, more withdrawn, less yourself. And just a quirky detail: in Finland, people are so serious about sleep that they give new parents baby sleep boxes, cardboard containers with built-in mattresses, clothes, and supplies. It's part of their national health plan. A literal box of calm. So be kind to your nighttime self. Create boundaries. Invite sleep with rituals. Let rest be sacred, not earned. Not postponed. Because the next morning, you're not just waking up to a new day, you're waking up to a brain more capable of noticing beauty, handling stress, and yes, feeling joy. That rested awareness prepares you for something essential: reconnecting with others. Because while you sleep alone, you heal better together. Let's head there next, into the science of touch, closeness, and the happiness chemical no one can get enough of. You probably didn't realize how much you needed touch, until it disappeared. A hand on your shoulder. A long hug. A casual nudge in a crowded room. During the pandemic, those simple gestures became scarce. And your body noticed. Deeply. Touch isn't just nice. It's necessary. Your skin is covered in nerve endings that respond specifically to human contact. When someone hugs you, or even holds your hand for a few seconds, your brain releases oxytocin, also called the cuddle hormone. It lowers stress. It boosts trust. It increases feelings of safety. And yes, it plays a key role in your ability to feel happy. Mainstream research from the University of California, Berkeley, found that oxytocin levels spike during moments of physical connection and remain elevated long enough to influence mood, memory, and even immune function. One warm touch can ripple through your whole system like a silent signal, you're not alone. Here's an interesting fact. Babies in neonatal units who receive regular gentle touch gain weight faster and show stronger brain development. Adults? Not so different. Studies show that people who experience regular consensual touch report higher relationship satisfaction, lower anxiety, and greater emotional stability. So when elbow bumps replaced hugs, and when even standing close to someone felt like a risk, your brain lost one of its most powerful happiness sources. Not social media. Not entertainment. Physical presence. Philosophers have questioned the role of the body in emotional life. Descartes famously drew a sharp line between mind and body, but newer thinkers, like Merleau-Ponty, argue that your body is not separate from your thoughts and feelings. You don't just feel joy. You are joy, physically. Even imagined touch activates parts of the brain associated with comfort. That's why a memory of being held, or a weighted blanket, or even seeing affection in a movie can sometimes trigger warmth. Your brain doesn't need the real thing all the time. It just needs reminders. But here's a quirky fact. Professional cuddling is a growing industry. That's right, people pay for platonic touch sessions that follow strict boundaries and safety protocols. It's not weird. It's just biology. And it's a sign of how touch-deprived many of us have become. You may have noticed this in yourself. A sudden awkwardness around hugs. A flinch where there used to be ease. That's not you being distant. That's your nervous system relearning what's safe. Touch became something to calculate, to negotiate. And now it might feel foreign. There remains considerable disagreement about how much touch humans need to stay emotionally healthy. Some psychologists point to the 5 hugs a day rule. Others argue it's more about the quality of connection than the quantity. But most agree, regular, meaningful touch lowers cortisol, raises oxytocin, and improves overall well-being. So how do you start to rebuild touch in a world that still feels a little hesitant? Start small. Pet your dog or cat longer than usual. Hug someone you trust for 10 seconds instead of 2. Offer a gentle touch to a friend's arm during conversation, if they're comfortable with it. That skin-to-skin moment tells both of your brains, we're okay here. Another gentle trick? Self-touch. Not in the weird way, relax. We're talking about self-soothing gestures, placing your hand on your chest when you're overwhelmed. Rubbing your own arms. Holding your face. These actions activate similar calming pathways in the brain. Your body doesn't always need someone else to feel cared for, it just needs contact. And don't underestimate the power of synchronized activities. Dancing. Walking side by side. Breathing together in yoga or meditation. These subtle forms of social rhythm mimic the emotional effects of touch, helping you feel connected, even without physical contact. You might find this surprising. In some cultures, communal bathing is still a major social ritual. From Japanese onsens to Finnish saunas, touch and proximity are woven into relaxation. And people in these communities report lower stress and higher life satisfaction. Coincidence? Science says probably not. Another tip, eye contact. It's not physical touch, but it can activate many of the same trust pathways in your brain. Look longer. Soften your gaze. Let connection in through the eyes if the hands aren't quite ready. And if you're still relearning comfort with closeness, that's okay. You're not behind. You're healing. Your body adapted to scarcity, and now it's unlearning, gently. One hug at a time. Philosophers still argue whether modern society has over-intellectualized relationships, replacing physical presence with abstract connection. Zoom meetings, texts, voice notes, they help, but they don't fully satisfy. Because your nervous system evolved in a world of shared meals, held hands, and shoulders leaned against each other during storms. So be intentional about rebuilding presence. Not just being in the same room, but being with. Sit close. Share warmth. Lean in. And if you live alone or don't have much access to regular touch, create sensory rituals that mimic the comfort of contact. Wrap yourself in a heavy blanket. Soak in a warm bath. Use a massage roller. Wear soft fabrics. Your skin still wants to feel held, even if by you. You might find this surprising. Oxytocin is not just the cuddle hormone. It also plays a role in trust, generosity, and even spiritual experiences. That's why touch-based connection isn't just physical, it's deeply emotional, even existential. And just a quirky observation, studies show that even shared laughter, when belly deep and mutual, causes small bursts of oxytocin. So yeah, your friend who sends you terrible memes at midnight? They're helping your hormone levels. Don't tell them. It'll go to their head. As your nervous system relaxes into that truth, that you can reconnect, that closeness is healing, we move into the next piece, not just touch, but the full sensory reset your brain craves. Nature. Movement. Air. Let's go outside together. Step outside. Go on, just for a moment. Feel the air on your skin, even if it's a little too hot or a bit too cold. Listen to the wind weaving through the trees or the hum of city life. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls, or a dog barks, or someone's wind chime clinks against the porch rail. Your nervous system hears it too, and without asking your permission, it starts to soften. Because here's the truth, your body is built for nature. Your brain evolved outdoors, hunting, foraging, watching the horizon. You're not just in nature. You are nature. And when you remember that, even briefly, happiness becomes a little more reachable. Mainstream research from Stanford University shows that just 90 minutes of walking in a natural setting, not even hiking, just walking, can lower activity in the brain's subgenual prefrontal cortex, the area linked with rumination and worry. Translation: nature quiets the mental loops. A surprising fact, the Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, is not about exercise or fitness. It's about slowly absorbing the forest atmosphere through all 5 senses. People who practice this regularly report lower cortisol levels, improved sleep, and greater happiness. The trees, it turns out, aren't just scenery. They're medicine. Even images of nature, when shown to hospital patients, have been shown to accelerate healing. One famous study found that patients recovering from surgery in rooms with a window view of trees healed faster and needed fewer pain meds than those facing a brick wall. Your brain doesn't just prefer green, it heals in it. There's been an ongoing debate about whether nature has meaning on its own or if we simply impose our desires onto it. Emerson believed nature was sacred, while Rousseau saw it as a wise, unspoiled guide. Today, many view nature as a mirror, showing us what we've lost or left behind. And perhaps happiness lies in that, too, rediscovering truths we once knew, before the noise of the world drowned them out. Soil contains a bacterium, Mycobacterium vaccae, that has been found to stimulate serotonin production when inhaled or absorbed through the skin. So yes, gardening really can make you happier, even if your plants hate you. Movement amplifies all of this. When you move your body outdoors, whether that's a walk, a stretch, or a wobble down the sidewalk after too much coffee, you engage your vestibular system and #40, balance and #41, your proprioception, body awareness, and your endorphins. Those chemicals aren't just about exercise. They're about coming home to your body. You might think movement needs to be intense to count, but that's outdated. Studies from Yale and Oxford show that light, regular movement improves mood even more than vigorous, irregular exercise. Think 10-minute walks. Think dancing in your kitchen. Think stretching while waiting for your tea to steep. That's happiness, too. There remains considerable disagreement about what kind of nature counts. Do city parks help as much as forests? Do houseplants offer the same benefit? Most experts agree, any interaction with the natural world, sunlight, sky, fresh air, helps. It's less about location and more about attention. And here's where things get beautifully weird. Even imagining yourself in nature activates some of the same brain pathways as actually being there. Guided visualization, like picturing yourself walking through a forest or lying in a meadow, can lower stress and increase serotonin levels. Your imagination isn't just for fantasy. It's for healing. So what does this mean for your happiness? It means you don't need to book a retreat to reconnect. Start small. Step outside when you take a phone call. Eat one meal a week outdoors, even if it's just toast and coffee. Watch the way the light changes on your wall during the afternoon. Let nature back into your day one crack at a time. Another tip, make your movement meaningful. Walk with music that matches your mood. Stretch slowly and thank your body out loud. Use your senses while you move. Notice how your feet feel, how your breath sounds, how the world smells. It turns exercise into presence. And don't forget to play. Climb something. Swing if you see a swing. Skip a little, if you think your knees can handle it. Your brain lights up differently when you move with joy, not just intent. That's the kind of movement your happiness remembers. Here's a quirky detail. Some therapists now prescribe ecotherapy, which involves guided walks in nature as a form of emotional healing. It's not about finding answers, it's about reconnecting with a sense of place. A sense of rhythm. A sense that you're not separate from the world, you're part of its beating heart. And if you're stuck inside most days, don't worry. There are still portals. Open your window. Tend to a houseplant. Put your bare feet on the floor. Watch nature documentaries with the sound up and the lights low. Let the planet back in, however you can. Because when you connect to nature, and move through it, you reconnect to a deeper part of yourself. The part that existed before the news, before the emails, before the pandemic. The part that knows how to be still. How to breathe. How to feel joy without permission. And speaking of permission, let's talk about something more loaded than anyone likes to admit, money. Because while happiness may not be for sale, financial security does shape your peace of mind, and it's time to explore that strange, uncomfortable intersection. Money can't buy happiness, but it sure can rent peace of mind for a while. That's the uncomfortable truth, isn't it? Especially now, when inflation stretches your budget like an old sweater and every quick grocery run feels like a financial strategy meeting. After the pandemic, many people found their relationship with money changed in ways they're still trying to decode. Let's be honest, happiness isn't about swimming in wealth. It's about feeling secure. And when your basic needs are under threat, food, housing, healthcare, it becomes almost impossible to access deeper joy. Your brain, ever the vigilant bodyguard, won't let you relax when it's still doing math at 2 a.m. Mainstream research, like the famous studies from Princeton and later updates from the University of Pennsylvania, showed that happiness does increase with income, but only up to a point. Originally that point was around $75,000 per year. More recent data suggests it might stretch a little higher, especially in urban areas. But after that, the boost flattens. More money doesn't mean more meaning. It just buys nicer chairs to worry in. You might find this surprising. People who make more money often report being less satisfied with their time. Why? Because time becomes transactional. They're constantly calculating if they're using it efficiently. And happiness doesn't like being watched like a productivity app. Here's something interesting. Financial stress doesn't just live in your bank account. It lives in your amygdala, your brain's fear center. Chronic money anxiety increases cortisol, disrupts sleep, and lowers decision-making ability. That's why stressed out people often make riskier financial choices. Your brain isn't being dumb. It's just being scared. An odd but true fact, in post-pandemic surveys, many people reported a shift in what wealth meant to them. Time became the new currency. Flexibility became status. For some, working fewer hours, even with less pay, led to higher life satisfaction. It wasn't about having more. It was about needing less. Philosophers still argue whether happiness depends on external circumstances or internal mindset. The Stoics believed that peace comes from desiring less. Modern economists argue that inequality, not poverty, is the real happiness killer. Turns out, it's not how much you have, but how much you compare. Comparison is brutal. You might not care about money until you see someone with more vacations, more space, more freedom. And social media makes that comparison constant. Even your happiest moments can feel smaller if you measure them against someone else's curated highlight reel. But here's the truth: financial well-being isn't about being rich. It's about being resourced. It's about having enough to feel safe, to say no, to breathe. If you've ever paid off a debt, skipped a bill, or felt that edge of the cliff feeling in your stomach when checking your bank balance, you know what I mean. There remains considerable disagreement about whether money should be viewed as energy, freedom, or simply a survival tool. Some spiritual traditions say money is just a neutral flow. Others warn against its corrupting influence. But in practical terms, money is emotional. It touches everything. And it gets especially complicated post-pandemic. Maybe you lost work. Maybe you saved more. Maybe you realized you were working a job you hated just to afford stuff you didn't really value. That's not a midlife crisis. That's a values realignment. So where does happiness come into all this? It starts with reframing. Ask yourself, what does enough look like for me? Not for Instagram. Not for your parents. For you. Enough might be fewer hours and more quiet. It might be saving for experiences, not objects. It might be redefining success as peace. You might find this surprising. A large study by the London School of Economics found that people with strong financial literacy, not high incomes, had higher subjective well-being. Knowledge is power. Understanding your money reduces fear and increases agency. So try a few gentle shifts. Create a joy budget. A small amount set aside every month for something that makes you happy, not practical. Just joyful. A fancy coffee. A new book. A ticket to something weird and wonderful. These small indulgences aren't wasteful. They're emotional nutrition. And practice gratitude with your finances, not just for what you have, but for what you've learned. For how you stretched that paycheck. For how you made it through months of uncertainty. That resilience is wealth, too. Here's another tip: reduce friction around money conversations. Talk about it more, with friends, partners, even with yourself. Shame festers in silence. Transparency builds confidence. You're not alone in this. Literally millions are rebuilding financially from scratch. There's solidarity in honesty. And yes, inequality still exists, and always complicates this conversation. Some people have safety nets. Some don't. Some inherit wealth. Some inherit debt. Happiness isn't about pretending those gaps aren't real. It's about being aware of them without letting them define your worth. Just a quirky observation: in some Scandinavian countries, wealth is so de-emphasized socially that people often hide signs of affluence. It's called Jantelagen, the law of Janti, a cultural code that values humility over status. And not coincidentally, those countries regularly rank highest on the Global Happiness Index. So maybe it's not about getting ahead. Maybe it's about getting aligned. Aligning your money with your values. Aligning your time with your priorities. Aligning your energy with what truly matters. That alignment is happiness. Or at least the soil it grows in. And when you stop chasing wealth and start cultivating enough, you create space for something that money can't buy: community, shared joy, and collective healing. That's where we're heading next, into the wild, wonderful world of togetherness. Let's talk about togetherness. Not just friendship or family, but that elusive, electric feeling of belonging. The moment when you laugh so hard your stomach hurts, when your voice blends into a choir of voices, when you catch someone's eye across a crowd and know they get it. That's collective joy. And it's more important to your happiness than you might think. During the pandemic, that kind of joy all but vanished. Shared meals were replaced with solo dinners in silence. Birthday parties turned into awkward Zoom calls. Even casual encounters, baristas, bus drivers, neighbors, suddenly involved 6 feet of distance and a face mask. What we lost wasn't just fun. We lost shared energy. And now, your nervous system might still be relearning how to feel safe in a crowd. Or even in a room. Mainstream research from the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley shows that people who engage in collective experiences, anything from singing together to participating in protests to watching sports in a stadium, report increased happiness, emotional resilience, and a deeper sense of purpose. You might find this surprising. One study found that synchronized movement with others, dancing, marching, even clapping, boosts endorphins and feelings of connectedness. Your brain literally rewards you for moving with your tribe. It says, you belong here. And here's something interesting. People who participate in rituals, weddings, funerals, cultural ceremonies, report higher emotional satisfaction, even when the events themselves are bittersweet. It's not about the emotion itself. It's about feeling it together. Philosophers have long questioned the role of community. Is it a necessity or a luxury? Aristotle believed humans are zoon politican, political animals, wired to live together. Sartre, on the other hand, warned that hell is other people. And yet, for all the headaches humans bring each other, most of us are still aching for connection. An odd but true fact, when people chant or sing together, their heart rates often begin to synchronize. So do their brain waves. Collective joy isn't just a metaphor. It's measurable. So if you've been feeling isolated, even surrounded by people, you're not alone. Real connection isn't about proximity. It's about attunement. Feeling seen, heard, held, even if only emotionally. There remains considerable disagreement about whether individual happiness should take priority over collective well-being. Western cultures tend to emphasize personal fulfillment. Eastern traditions often center harmony, duty, and the group. But what's becoming clearer is that interdependence, the understanding that your well-being is tied to others, creates a deeper, more sustainable happiness. And here's the hopeful part, it doesn't take much to start reconnecting. Say yes to the next invitation, even if you're tired. Go to the potluck, the poetry night, the random community walk. You don't have to be the life of the party. Just be present. You might find this surprising. People who experience collective effervescence, a term coined by sociologist Emil Durkheim to describe the energy of shared emotion, report stronger immune systems and fewer depressive symptoms. That means even shouting at a concert with strangers has long-term mental health benefits. Science says so. And if you're introverted or socially exhausted, that's okay. Connection doesn't have to be big or loud. One-on-one talks. Group chats with actual soul in them. Eye contact with the grocery store clerk. That moment of, same here, with someone who just gets it. These add up. Try creating micro-rituals with people you care about. Sunday calls. Walk and talks. Inside jokes. Repeated traditions. They don't have to be fancy. The repetition is what builds the bond. Your brain learns to expect, then cherish, those moments. And don't underestimate the joy of shared purpose. Volunteer for something. Join a cause. Help someone move, even if it's just hauling 2 boxes. Research shows that acting together for something bigger than ourselves triggers a surge of dopamine and oxytocin, and helps rewire your sense of belonging. Here's a quirky little detail. There's a concept in South Africa called Ubuntu, which roughly translates to, I am because we are. It's a philosophy of humanity through connection, that your individual identity only truly makes sense in relation to others. After the isolation of recent years, that idea feels like a balm. You don't need 100 best friends. You just need a few safe people. Or even one. The kind of person who says, "Let me know when you get home," and means it. The kind who sits in silence with you when words are too heavy. Connection doesn't erase sadness. But it carries it. Lightens it. Holds your hand through it. And yes, shared joy is contagious. Laughter spreads through a room like wind through leaves. Watch a baby giggle and try not to smile. Watch a group of people dance badly but joyfully and feel your chest soften. That's your mirror neurons firing. That's biology doing its best to say, "We're in this together." So reach out. Risk small talk. Start slow. Invite someone into your weird little world. Let yourself be invited, too. Because collective joy isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline. It recharges your hope. It gives your healing somewhere to land. And when shared joy turns into shared resilience, something even deeper grows. Because the final piece of this puzzle isn't about bouncing back. It's about growing forward. Let's explore that gentle, often invisible magic called resilience. Resilience isn't flashy. It doesn't strut or sparkle. You won't see it trending on social media. In fact, real resilience often looks a lot like just showing up. Getting out of bed. Feeding the cat. Brushing your teeth even when the world feels sideways. It's quiet. It's stubborn. It's survival with a touch of grace. And after everything you've lived through, resilience might just be your most loyal companion. The pandemic didn't just test your patience or disrupt your routine, it reshaped your emotional scaffolding. And somewhere in that chaos, you adapted. You endured. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not proudly. But you did. That's resilience. And the good news is, it's not a fixed trait. It's a skill. Mainstream psychology defines resilience as the ability to recover from stress, trauma, or adversity. But newer research expands that definition. It's not just about bouncing back, it's about growing forward. About emerging a little wiser, a little softer, a little more you. A major study out of Columbia University found that people who experienced moderate adversity, not constant trauma, not zero hardship, but just enough struggle, were more emotionally resilient in the long run. They had better coping skills. More empathy. Greater appreciation for life. Turns out, a few cracks can let the light in. Resilience isn't just emotional. It shows up in your immune system, your heart rate, your hormones. When you practice it, your body literally recalibrates. Stress hormones lower. Feel-good chemicals rise. It's like your biology whispers, "We've got this." And here's something interesting. Resilient people tend to have a few things in common, not superpowers, but habits. They cultivate meaning. They stay connected. They ask for help. And perhaps most importantly, they accept what is, while still believing in what could be. For centuries, philosophers have explored whether resilience is a natural human state or something society demands to keep us functioning. Some argue it's heroic. Others warn it can be weaponized, used to pressure people into enduring unjust conditions. And it's true, resilience shouldn't mean tolerating suffering forever. It should mean reclaiming your power, when you're ready. There remains considerable disagreement about whether resilience can be taught. Some say it's embedded in personality. Others insist it's built through environment and repetition. But neuroscience shows that even small shifts, like reframing a thought or taking a calming breath, start to rewire your brain toward strength. So how do you build it? Especially when you still feel fragile? Start small. Celebrate the almost didn't. The moments when you almost canceled, but showed up. Almost cried, but breathed through it. Almost gave up, but didn't. Those aren't small victories. Those are foundation stones. You might find this surprising. Writing about your experiences, not for an audience, just for yourself, helps you process them more deeply and recover emotionally faster. This is called expressive writing. Even 15 minutes, once a week, can make a difference. And then there's self-compassion. The not-so-secret ingredient of real resilience. Research from Dr. Kristen Neff's lab found that people who treat themselves kindly in hard times bounce back more effectively than those who push through with harsh self-talk. Being your own friend, especially when you're struggling, isn't weakness. It's strategy. An odd but true fact: bamboo can bend almost in half during a storm without breaking, and return upright once the wind passes. That's what resilience looks like in nature. Not rigid strength. Flexible strength. You can do that, too. Try this. When something goes wrong, pause and ask, what would I tell a friend if they were in this exact situation? Then say that, to yourself. Out loud if you can. Your brain will register the kindness, even if it feels weird. And remember, resilience doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. It means knowing it might not be, and still choosing to move forward with curiosity. With courage. With hope, however thinly stretched. You might find this surprising: people who score high in resilience tests aren't necessarily more optimistic. They're more realistic. They acknowledge the hard stuff, but believe in their ability to navigate it. And if you're still in a rebuilding phase, give yourself credit. Real credit. The quiet kind. You survived uncertainty. You held your breath for months at a time. You adapted to silence, to distance, to grief. And somehow, your heart still softens when the light hits the window just right. That's resilience. It doesn't ask for applause. It just asks you to keep going. Maybe slower now. Maybe wiser. Maybe more gently. And as you take this final breath with me tonight, as you settle into the stillness of your space, let's wind down together. Let it all soften now. No more questions to answer. No more tabs to keep open in your mind. Just you, lying here, held by gravity, wrapped in the quiet rhythm of your own breath. Your body knows how to rest. Let it remember. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop. Let the muscles around your eyes loosen. They've been working hard, scanning, protecting. Now they can let go. You've wandered through the science of happiness tonight, layer by layer, gently peeling back what was buried. You've remembered that happiness isn't a destination. It's a texture. A frequency. A pattern your body is slowly learning to trust again. And look at you. Still here. Still curious. Still brave enough to feel. Your breath, right now, is enough. Your heartbeat, steady and quiet, is enough. This moment, as small and ordinary as it may seem, is enough. If your mind wanders, let it. If your thoughts rise, let them float past like clouds. You don't have to grab any of them. Just be. You're allowed to just be. You are resilient. You are relearning joy. You are part of something bigger than fear. Bigger than struggle. You are part of life. Let that truth carry you into sleep, or into whatever peace this moment allows. No pressure. Just rest. We'll be here again, whenever you need us.